If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything except my faith. I want to fall forward. At least I figure that way I'll see what I'm about to hit. Denzel Washington. Having a fallback, a plan B, it's better than nothing, or it's not that bad. Is that how you want to live your life? And if you're doing this in your business, what if it's the only reason that you're failing? Today, I want to do a quick deep dive into falling back onto something, failing forward, and pivoting. So if you're ready, let's dive right in. You know, by nature, we are all cyclical. Only we've been taught how to flatline through all of our seasons. Now, for some of us, our seasons mean that we just need to show up differently as we journey through that season, both in life and in business. But for others and in other seasons, those seasons will completely change who you are. And you might find and feel this deep need to change your business and your life to reflect that. Today, I want to talk specifically about pivoting in your business. And I want you to also invite you to notice any correlations in your life. Now, I've worked with enough business owners to know that the desire to pivot is not always the effect or the impact of a season. Oftentimes, it's a reaction to fear. So here's an example. You have a result in your business and it doesn't feel good. It's not what you wanted. It doesn't feel good in your body or your brain. And your brain starts to tell you, look, we knew this wouldn't work. Probably best that you change your mind. Let's do this other thing. Let's do this other thing now because it's bound to be better. And so off you go, merrily having a pivot. Now, in this pivot, what happens is your brain goes, oh, goody, goody, goody. This feels new and exciting and fun. As you spend hours on Canva creating new branding and start to think about what new messaging you're going to use or who you're going to work with differently this time or what new process or product or service you're going to sell. And in that moment, it feels good. And of course it feels good because you have not yet put yourself in the space to sell it, to do another launch. You haven't yet had the experience where you haven't had any responses to your social media posts, or you haven't had that viral video or whatever it is that you're making mean success in your business. So you do the pivot because you think you're going to get better results over there and you're going to get quicker results over there and it's going to be less painful over there. And in that period of time, the pivot actually alleviates the boredom and the uncertainty. But notice that is just temporary. Because at some point, you're going to have to go back and do the same things that you did in your other pre-pivot business. And you're going to risk the experience that you've had before. Now, on the flip side, I do believe that sometimes the pivot is an absolute calling. You're being called away from falling back on the same old thing and leaning into something new. It's a reflection of the personal metamorphosis that you've been on. So what I found with my business owners oftentimes is that as they do the work on themselves, they realized that in so many other ways they were holding them back and they weren't actually being their true authentic selves in their business. And then the pivot there becomes a purpose pivot, a passion pivot, oh my goodness, this is what I should have always been doing pivot, but because I'd been living under layers of shite that I'd put on myself, I couldn't see that truth for myself. This is why I say that business coaching basically is you need life coaching. Life coaching is business coaching. I don't believe that most small business owners are struggling because of not knowing how. I think it's more to do with them not understanding why they don't do the how as consistently as they should. They don't know how to manage their emotions and their brains when things don't go right. They don't know how to stay in belief. Therefore, they don't know how to stay into momentum. So it's actually life coaching that helps them make this progress. Anyway, I digress slightly. So I guess I'm going to ask you now is how do you know when the pivot is coming from something that's fear-based versus something that's purpose-based? And I kind of just ascertained three basic concepts, I guess, I want you to have a look at. Number one, I'd invite you to look at patterns of behavior. How often have you or are you changing your mind? And when you're changing your mind, what's happened just before that? What's your brain been offering you? How have you been feeling? Notice those patterns. And in that same vein, I want to ask you to really be honest about how often you see things through. Not once, not twice, but maybe 10 times? How often do you take something through a whole process, then evaluate yourself through the process, evaluate the results, and then say, where could I change things differently this time? Where could I show up differently? Where could I think differently? How could I do the process differently? Because if you're not doing those things now, it doesn't matter how many times you'll pivot, you're still not going to do those, because you're putting all of your feelings in the results, and you're not giving anything a chance to work. The second thing I want you to have a look at is expectations. What expectations are you putting on this pivot? What are you telling yourself is going to change? What specifically are you telling yourself is going to be different? Make sure, if you've listened to the episode on the model, which I think is episode 170, I believe. If you haven't listened to that yet, go get it and get your worksheet. But if you're running a model, look at what you're telling yourself is going to be different. Look at if you're looking just to change the action line. So the action right now is I'm doing A. Then you go run a different model and you say, okay, I'm going to run this next model. I'm going to run a strategy B. So you're just changing the action line, but your thoughts and feelings eventually might even be the same. And the results are going to be the same, because you're just changing the actions versus how you're thinking and feeling about something. What's your brain telling you is going to change because of this pivot? And that's where you really need to get clear. Because if you get really honest, you'll find yourself thinking that this will feel different. And of course it will feel different. I've already told you why it feels different in the start, because it's new. We all have this human need for new. So it feels new, it feels exciting, but more important than that, we have no attachment in that newness, because we haven't gone through the process of trying to sell it yet. This is when most of those pivots happen, right after someone tried to sell something, right after they put that post or that email out that they thought would be amazing and get them like their next 10 or 20 grand. And it's nothing. It's just like dust. Right, that's it. I need to pivot. I've done it more times than I care to tell you. So the third thing is, and this is slightly different, how connected do you feel? When you speak, how true does it feel to you? And when I talk about that, I'm talking about when you talk about your business and why you do it and who you're talking to and how committed you are. Your body will always be giving you clues about how true that is for you. It might just be the tiniest little twinge of, I don't think so. That's not really true, but we bury it, we suppress it because we've been taught to flatline. We also know that if we lean into that, we've got to open up potentially a can of worms, and we've got to ask ourselves some very difficult questions and potentially make some very difficult decisions. But here's the thing. If you really do feel disconnected, but you find that you've pivoted a lot and you feel disconnected frequently, then there is something underlying that no matter what you keep picking, you're always going to feel disconnected. But that's for another episode. But I want to talk to you right now. If you are feeling that disconnection and you want to honor that pivot, then please honor the pivot. And I'm going to just quickly share a personal story with you right now. Because when you know it's time to pivot, it's time to pivot. The difficulty is here. It depends, I guess, on how in tune you are with yourself. Because I've pivoted, I can't even tell you how many times in my business. But over the last couple of weeks with this eclipse season that we're in, I felt very disconnected and very disinterested, which is completely not who I think I am as a person. I'm just not that kind of person. So it felt very off to me, and it felt very, very uncomfortable to feel so disconnected and so disinterested in what I was doing. And I took some time to lean into the seasons and the cycles and of myself and of the planets and all the things. And I thought, you know what, it's absolutely time to pivot. And when I took the time to do these 3 steps and looked at my patterns of behavior, I could see that over the past 5 years, whilst I have felt like I've pivoted, it has been a branding pivot or a slight message change or a slight lean into something a little bit different. But ultimately, it's still been falling back on the same niche because it's comfortable, because I know it, because I could do it with my eyes closed. But that isn't where I'm at right now. I have had some seasons and cycles in the last 2 years that have innately changed me. And have also helped me to remember the truth of who I am. And I'm at the stage now where I'm ready. I don't want to fall back anymore. I'm very willing to risk not just falling forward, but I'm willing to risk failing forward so that I can learn. And so at the moment, I'm in this place called nothingness. Things are in creation mode. But I will be moving my coaching away from coaching small business owners specifically to coaching women through the seasons and cycles of life so they can show up more fully in all of their life, in their relationships, in their business, in themselves, in their health, in just how they feel connected to who they are and the universe as a whole. And it will reflect and impact every area of their life. I don't know yet what specifically that looks like, but that's why I wanted to share this episode with you today, because I have been somebody that's pivoted a lot. I can honestly look back now and go, oh, but I can also see how some of these pivots were just a tiny shift in nuance that allowed me to avoid some discomfort, that allowed me just to kind of do something different to create a different feeling, when actually I could have just created a different feeling. But there's also a sense of comfort in just keep talking to the same people, having the same message, because it felt safer than coming out of the box. But if I look back now, I wasn't ready for that yet. Anyway, it's a very long and convoluted way to say that if you are a business owner and you find yourself constantly pivoting, which means that effectively you're staying in the same place because you're not moving forward, you have to get clear on just a couple of things. Are you pivoting out of fear? Are you making micro pivots like I did, but you're still kind of doing the same message and you're kind of talking to the same people? Nothing's really changing because it's too scary or uncertain to make that bigger change. And also, please bear some consideration that maybe what needs to happen is you need to dive into your seasons and your cycles. And like I did, and like I've seen with my other clients, do that inner work so that you can look back at yourself in the mirror and go, holy crap, that's why nothing fitted. That's why I couldn't manage this, because I didn't know myself enough. I didn't have the courage and the confidence and the belief in myself. And I've been putting all of this pressure on my business to give that to me. And the only person that can give me that is me. And then I can show up fully in my business. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Build Your Business Six Pack podcast. There will be 2 more after this. I'll be finishing this podcast on episode 200 and a new one is coming. So please watch this space. If you would like to join my email list before I disappear, I will put a link in the show notes around here somewhere. You will still find me on social media, but more details will come as I finish off this podcast. Thank you once again. I'll speak to you again in the next episode.